Hello, I'm Adam Rutherford. I'm a scientist and a writer, but most importantly, I'm a member of the species Homo sapiens, the latest in a long line of ape-like creatures. Now, human beings may have their biological faults, such as back pain or problems during labour. But as a species, we're pretty successful. We've developed the ability to walk upright, to talk and to reason. We're the product of millions of years of evolution, as Charles Darwin worked out from his observations of the world around him. Darwin transformed our understanding of nature and the teaching of science forever. But in this programme, we'll be asking whether that understanding is being threatened and whether that teaching is being undermined.
Creationism, we're led to believe, is making a comeback. Adam and Eve are breaking out from the church, mosque and synagogue and moving into the classroom, the science classroom. Goodbye the descent of man, hello the fall of man. I'll be examining the issues and talking to the leading academic who dared to suggest creationism should be addressed in the science class. Professor Michael Rice will be explaining his views, which sparked a controversy that cost him the most prestigious job in science education.
Now, what you find as well, though, of course, is that an increasing proportion of young people come to school either with quite strong creationist beliefs or from family backgrounds that have got them. So what interests me is whether or not teachers in science lessons should take account of that.
Evidence for a rise in creationism among school pupils is, understandably, mostly anecdotal. But there is a detectable increase in the number of students who are starting science degrees believing the world and everything upon it was made and put there by a supreme deity.
Well, in the first year evolution course, I think about 20% of them perhaps would profess overtly to be creationist, have creationist views, which I find quite surprising from my background and my training.
As we hear from Darwin's great-great-grandson, his theories and his methods must be placed at the heart of science education.
It's the rigour and imagination with which he approached each problem that he tackled, using observation and experience, that's so wonderful, I think, and such an example for us all today.
Darwin lived and worked here, Down House near Bromley in Kent. "2009 brings the bicentenary of his birth and also sees the passing of 150 years since the publication of The Origin of Species, his great work which shattered religious perceptions. It was along this lane that he thought through his ideas and worried about them.
So, Randall, this is Darwin's thinking path. Do you think he was considering when walking here the wider implications of his theory?
He must have been, very often. It was a great concern of his, and he would walk round this path every day 4 or 5 times and would have been thinking through every implication of the theory.
Darwin delayed publishing his conclusions because of those implications, that we're not descended from Adam and Eve, we're just another species that evolved like all the others. He wanted to make sure he could counter every argument and satisfy every objection. For 150 years, no one has been able to undermine his theory using science rather than religion. Jeremy Pritchard of Birmingham University is a biologist who specialises in plants but uses bones to engage students when explaining the evolutionary process. With an almost missionary zeal, he's reaching out to schools to promote Darwinism and combat creationism.
I think some teachers perhaps have creationist views and don't want to disabuse them of it. I think other teachers are too busy. Explaining to somebody evolution, you need quite a lot of knowledge beforehand. You can say, how can a 747 evolve by chance in one go? But if you were to go to the factory and explain this is how it's put together bit by bit, that would take a lot longer, and it's the same analogy in science.
Sixth formers are invited to use the university's laboratories and resources. In this exercise, they're tracing the development of cranial capacity. They can use the fossil record and any passing living specimen.
This is a very familiar position from my undergraduate days, although mostly I was asleep at the time. Move your head from that position. That looks like I've got quite a prominent brow there, which is a characteristic of Neanderthals. I'm not sure I'm happy about that.
I think as a scientist it's very important to engage. I mean, we're obviously often accused of being in the ivory tower and not coming down and talking to people about our science, so that's it. Obviously it's a recruitment thing as well. It's important that people know the sort of things you can study at university and how you can further your A-level studies. And it's also because of some of the evolution questions you've been raising that I personally think we should address some of these and we should take people on. We shouldn't sit there and hide and not talk about it. And the human evolution story obviously is a great context because everybody's human.
So if you're a Hindu, how does learning about evolution in this way conflict with your religious beliefs?
I wouldn't say they necessarily conflict. What I would say though is that I personally believe that God created the first initial species and that species has slowly evolved over time.
Where better to see the effect of billions of years of evolution than the zoo, in this case London Zoo. Birmingham University's Biosciences department has invited nearly 200 sixth formers for a day out, its first attempt to reach a wider audience. The day starts in the Zoological Society's lecture hall.
Right, evolution, that's really why we're here. Talk about evolution and where all that diversity that we see in the zoo has come from.
Lowland gorillas. 4 pairs of legs, gills, feathers, no. Hair? Yes. Okay.
You're going to look at these animals and make some decisions about 26, 27 characters I've suggested for about 45, 50 animals. And we're going to score that in a binary form. Put a 1 if you think the character is present and a 0 if it's absent.
Does it have claws?
Yes.
Thumb? No. What about parental care? What do you think?
No, just leave.
I don't think Komodos bury their eggs. I think they put them in nests and incubate them.
Okay.
I just read that off the sign.
It's called scientific research. I know it's not a scientific sample, but in the straw poll conversations I had with students, almost all had faith, and none had a problem in accepting evolution.
Personally, I'm a Christian myself, but I still believe in evolution, and I think that's the way that things should be.
I kind of use the Bible to influence my decisions. I don't solely base my life on like religious teachings and stuff. They kind of just guide me along the way, and I go along with what scientists say about the evolution of animals, where we do evolve from apes.
The students' data are fed into a programme which groups all the species according to their characteristics and comes up with this.
Wow. So here's
a phylogenetic tree.
You've got all the mammals here in that group. And then butterfly, blue bottle.
So when you look at this output, does this help you connect up all of the different species that you've been looking at?
Yeah, because you can see that where they derive from each other.
And does that help you understand how evolution works?
Yeah, it does, because you can see who's kind of grouped together now, and then you can see where they've all stemmed from, so it's really interesting.
A phylogenetic tree is the only diagram that appears in The Origin of Species. Darwin is best remembered for his voyages on HMS Beagle and his observations around the Galapagos Islands, but he also made use of what he saw here at London Zoo. And he relied even more on studying nature in his own backyard.
It was his open-air laboratory, and just here, for example, we've got one of the 54 kinds of gooseberry that he cultivated here, and this was artificial selection, which was comparable to what nature does in natural selection. He shows from that how if you either artificially or naturally select the plants each generation, you can get the variations to develop into major differences between varieties which can eventually become separate species.
So why was this field so important to Darwin?
It was here that he looked closely at the phenomenon of biodiversity, really for the first time, to take one area with a uniform habitat and just count the number of different plants that were growing here, and he found that there were about 140 different species of plant growing in this one small area.
So it really shows that you don't have to go all the way to the Galapagos Islands to get a real understanding of variation in nature.
Exactly.
So with all the evidence around us to support evolution, why is it being rejected by more and more pupils?
I think that what's happening in America has certainly come over here in the sense that the intelligent design debate in the States has spilled over into some of the faith schools here, has got into people's psyche and people are thinking about it. I'm surprised it's a problem because, of course, in this country we have the safety valve of RE lessons, which you don't have in the States. So I really haven't got a full answer to it. I think there is some agitation from the creationist side, though. For example, there's been some big mail shots of a lot of material, truth in creationism and stuff, to schools, and teachers often find it difficult to deal with that when they're multitasking other things.
In 2006, an organisation called Truth in Science sent this material to every school in the country, advocating the theory of intelligent design, the belief that nature is shaped by a higher entity. The organisation claimed that it had 59 positive responses from schools who said that it was a useful classroom resource. Its impact has also been observed by Michael Rice. Expressing his views on how teachers should respond to creationism led to him stepping down as Director of Education at the Royal Society. He continues, however, as the Professor of Science Education at the Institute of Education. He's also an ordained minister of the Church of England. Instead of sitting in his office, we invited him to take a pew at a nearby church.
Within the Christian tradition, creationism has definitely become more powerful. Obviously, that has been centred in the USA, but it's been exported from the USA, not just to the United Kingdom, but to other countries. The Truth in Science DVDs, which I've looked through, have not, in my experience, been widely used. This is mainly because most biology teachers think they're poor quality and reject them. A small number use them. They're more likely to use them to argue against their content, showing how some of the arguments are invalid than anything else.
The government responded to Truth in Science by reminding schools that creationism and intelligent design are not scientific theories and have no place in the curriculum. But there's another reason for the increasing disbelief in evolution.
The other reason is now we have a great many more children from Muslim families in schools in Britain, and quite a high proportion of the Muslim community has creationist beliefs. In Islam, creationist beliefs are much more at the centre of mainstream religious faith, and therefore, as the number of Muslims in the United Kingdom increases, I'd expect to carry on seeing more and more Islamic students with creationist beliefs.